First of all, thank you to the sponsors, KPMG, SFU, HSBC, ICBC, TELUS, National Post, CIBC, and Four Seasons. We can't brush over organizations like this because the work that WXN does only happens because we get great organizations that support women in all of our various roles. So kudos to all of you who have the privilege of working for organizations like that, and kudos to the leadership there. Just a couple of confessions and caveats. Okay, the dress, okay? Some of you know that I have teenage daughters. Two of them, well, they're not teenagers anymore. Two of them are going to be at lunch. This was purchased in one of the very rare unsupervised shopping trips. I need to call on the sisterhood, all of you. Have my back here if you hear any of the groans or moans from the daughters that are here about how dare you go out looking like that. So have my back, okay? Just another little confession. And somebody talked earlier about bringing women to things like this, and Michael made some comments about his own daughter. I actually have 3 generations of my family coming to lunch. My sister is here right now, God bless her, and she's been leaning over throughout the day as I've been listening to the remarkable comments from Deb and from Amy and from the panel, and I've been saying things like, oh my gosh, they're so amazing, oh my gosh, I was going to say that, oh, that's something I was going to say, and she goes, well, you might be on the right track then. Thanks, Jill, thanks. But I do have my mother coming as well, and she's 82. Is she 82? Yeah, she's 82. Oh yeah, don't tell. Yeah, you can't tell anybody this. Okay, she's 82. She is a force to be reckoned with. She came and stayed with me in Toronto for a weekend a couple of months ago, and the only reason she came to stay with me was because I could then drive her to the airport the next day because she was traveling South America by herself for 2 weeks. And no, she didn't phone. We had no idea where she was. We rarely know where she is. And she just might say something out loud at lunch. So, you know, just run with it, okay? All right. Oh, one last confession, and then I will get to the stories because I know we've got a short time frame. Okay, Deb, I shop at Park Royal. When you were telling that story about that child flailing around, my heart was in my throat until you said it was a boy. I just thought, oh, thank God it was a boy. Because I've been there, actually, in Park Royal with my children on the floor like that. So I need one of those nanas. Okay, so what did I want to talk about today? Well, Amy made that comment earlier about only dead fish swim with the current. I guess they don't swim, they go with the current. And as some of you may know, I rarely go with the current. So I am going to talk about something a little bit different. I want to tell you some stories about personal happiness. Because I actually think personal happiness is the foundation for everything. It's the foundation for everything that we do, and more importantly, it's the foundation for everything that we want to do. So I thought for the next few minutes I'd tell you some stories about personal happiness. And first of all, though, a couple of caveats. Yes, the legal DNA is still there. What I'm talking about are personal stories. It's not a recipe. It's not what you should or should not do. Some of you may be rolling your eyes right now thinking, oh my God, personal happiness, what does that have to do with anything today? Is she delusional? Maybe, but I'm quite happy in my delusions. And nobody's going to break me down from them. But actually, I don't wander around all day with a vacant grin on my face, disconnected from the seriousness of life. Maybe I do, but not intentionally. I get it. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, despite our best intentions, sometimes things don't work out. So when I'm talking about being happy, I am talking about a level of satisfaction with our place on the planet that allows us to ride with the ups and with the downs, but it's a level of happiness that puts a smile on our face and, more importantly, allows us to put a smile on the face of other people. So that's what I'm going to talk about, and I'll start with a little saying, and I have a boatload of them, so be lucky, you're lucky you don't live with me, seriously. So one of the little sayings I say to my kids frequently is, well, if you're not happy, what are you? So I actually do say that to myself every now and then. So with no scientific support at all, only slightly more than half a century of life experience. Doesn't that sound awful? More than half a century life experience. Let me tell you a little bit about what I think is important in personal happiness just from my own experience. And there's sort of three little themes here. The first one is I know what I stand for, and I live by what I stand for. In common parlance, that would be I'm a values-based girl. No, not the value, the 60% off. I am actually a values-based girl. So what's the big deal about values? We kind of toss the word around a fair bit, but I'm not sure that we spend that much time really digesting what does it really mean? What does it look like in our daily lives? Because these days, all too often, I think we are completely consumed with doing. We have to get the email done. We have to be the first to respond. Okay, guilty as charged. I spend a lot of time on my email. And we have the task lists, and we have the project lists, and we have the timelines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there is so much pressure on us to do more, better, faster, that very rarely do we get people saying to us, although it was said here, God bless you, very rarely do we get people saying to us, just stand back a little minute and ask yourself why. And ask yourself, are you really happy with what you're doing? So, Roy Disney, another little quote, said, if you know your values, decision-making is actually quite easy. And so let me tell you a little story about that. It's 1990, and I am a hardworking associate in then Russell and Dumoulin, now Fasken Martineau. And I had a 15-month-old at home, and I was 7 months pregnant with our second child. And there was rarely a day that went by that Brad and I weren't completely amazed at how this little creature who could only just barely walk could completely turn a very organized life upside down. And those of you that have young children or have had young children will probably remember that. And here we had another one on the go. And we were rolling with things pretty well. And I was working away in the office, and into the doorway walked the three most respected and revered people in the firm from my professional perspective. The firm chairman, Michael Goldie, the firm managing partner, Michael Fitch, and my department chair, Gavin Hume. And there was this moment, it seemed like an eternity, it was probably a few seconds, when I thought, just what did I do? It must be really, I didn't think I did anything that bad. And I had absolutely no idea why they were there. And Mr. Goldie, and right up till the day he died, I called him Mr. Goldie. Mr. Goldie walked in, stuck out his hand, and said, "Congratulations, Sue, the partners have voted, and we'd like to welcome you into the partnership." And I looked at him. And I know some of you that are in professional services firms are thinking right now, well, that's a load of baloney. What about the interview, and what about the submissions that you have to make? Okay, in the olden days, ladies, partnership was a star chamber exercise. You had no idea really when it was coming, no idea what the process was. People just arrived and offered you partnership. And for those of us that weren't that attentive to things like partnership, and I really wasn't, it was a bit of a shock. So I looked at them and I thought, oh, that's nice. And I said, I actually said, well, thank you very much. I'll go home tonight, I'll talk to Brad, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. And, okay, so some of you know the reaction, right? Some of the older gals are showing the reaction. So the three of them, these are high-powered dudes, right? Three of them look at me, their jaws dropped, their faces went white, and I realized in that instant that in the 70 to 80 years of the firm's existence prior to that, and all of the people who had been offered partnership prior to that given day, they knew the right answer, and it wasn't, I'm going to go home and think about it, I'll get back to you. So that was, let's say, 11 o'clock in the morning. The rest of the day, my doorway was clogged with members of the executive committee, senior partners, et cetera, who I was sure prior to that day, a number of them didn't realize that the little girl waddling down the hall was actually a partnership candidate with a belly out to here. And they were coming in to find out what was wrong. What was wrong? I understand that you didn't accept partnership. And I said, well, no, I just have to go home and talk to my husband about it because this is a family decision. Oh, okay. And you could see the looks, oh gosh, that's what happens when you let the women in, you know? They didn't say it out loud, but you know, you could just see it. So anyhow, I went home and, you know, said to Brad worked in the movies then, and I said, so how was your day? And he told me, and he said, well, how was your day? I said, well, you know, it's kind of interesting, you know, they offered me partnership. He went, oh, what does that mean? I said, well, yeah, don't really know. I think you get more money, but I think there's a boatload more responsibility. And he goes, well, what'd you say? I said, well, I told them that I'd get back to them. He goes, what did they say? I said, well, they're kind of freaked out. And he said, what do you think we should do? I said, well, I don't know. What do you think we should do? And at that moment, Diana came screaming. Diana was is our eldest daughter. She came screaming into the kitchen with, you know, the latest crisis, and I don't know what she had done. And we're like, oh, God. And we came back to the kitchen after we'd settled her down, and we sort of looked at each other and we sort of laughed and said, really? You think you can take that on with Diana and whoever's coming along in a couple of months? And so it was easy. It was an easy decision. And we knew our values. Our values were to raise our family, to build a family, to raise a family. And at that point, taking on a whole boatload of other responsibilities in my career didn't work. So I went back to the firm the next day. I was too afraid to go to Mr. Goldie's office, so I went to Gavin's office, and I said, so Brad and I chatted, and Gavin looked at me and he said, and I said, I'm going to decline. Nobody had ever declined partnership in the firm at that point. And he said, okay, and he said, any particular reasons? And I said, yeah, look at how I look right now. And he didn't get it at first, and you know, that was right at the point where guys were really sensitive about what they could say to you about what you wore and whatnot. And so he looked at me, and I said, no, Gavin, it's about the kids. I said, I go, Diana, and we got another one, and Bradley works like crazy, I work like crazy. I just can't take the responsibility on. I can't be whatever it is, whatever it means to be a good partner and be a good mom and be a good spouse. And so I'm going to decline. And what happened in the next 24 hours was nothing short of remarkable, because those same guys that had been in my doorway the day before asking what was wrong came to my doorway and said, congratulations. That was a gutsy decision. There were 5 or 6 guys that came in and said, you know, I'm not really sure how it works for you girls, but that was a gutsy decision. And that said volumes to me about the organization that I had chosen to work with. And as many of you know, I stayed 26 years, I guess, at the firm. But the real message there is, you know, if you know your values, decision making is actually not that hard. Whether it's your corporate strategy, whether it's your personal planning, whether it's your life strategy, know your values. It clarifies things. So the second thing sort of flowing from that is I take responsibility for my own happiness. And I got to tell you, if you got 3 teenage daughters, if you don't take responsibility for your own happiness, you're sunk. So I do take responsibility for my own happiness. I don't let anybody else give me permission to be happy. Because if we allow others to define under what conditions we can be happy, are we ever really happy? And I don't mean to be philosophical, but we have to take responsibility for our own happiness. And I'm going to pick up on a comment that was made a couple of times this morning, that I actually believe, I really believe, that if we do what makes us happy, if we like what we do it better, we get better results, we get more recognition, we feel more confident, and that cycle goes. and goes in a positive direction. So a little story about taking responsibility for my own happiness and not letting somebody else define what I can and cannot do. So 1979, I am old, 1979, I was just finishing off my business degree. And I had spent the previous 3 summers working for a big automaker in Ontario on a summer program that they had. And I loved it. I absolutely loved working in the auto industry. I will, just a tiny piece of advice. I know we're not supposed to give pieces of advice. Maybe it's not this way now, but I was the first woman to work in labor relations in the automaker in the plant. And I was 19. And if you ever decide to go and work in labor relations in an auto plant, don't wear a white dress and open-toed sandals on your first day. It doesn't. It causes a little excitement in the plant, but it kind of is distracting. So anyhow, I had worked for this automaker in human resources, then called personnel, labor relations, and in sales planning. And I loved the organization. And right then, in '79, I was tossing around whether I would finish my business degree and go and work in the business world, or whether I'd go to law school. And I was having a debate with myself. I'd taken the LSAT just in case, but it was March, I guess, March, April, and the recruiting team from the automaker were out on campus out at UBC, and you know, they asked if I would meet with them, which of course I said I would, because I was kind of keen to work with them. I thought, well, it would be neat to go to Ontario, work with a massive company, get a bit of experience, etc. So we were having the conversation, interview, and they were suggesting different things that I could do and where I could go, etc. And I was in there and I was thinking, okay, I think I might do this. And then one of them said, so, you know, where do you actually see yourself going in the automaker? And they said, you know, have you given that much thought? And I said, yeah, I actually have. And they said, oh, okay, well, where would you see yourself going? I said, I want to be the president of the automaker. And they laughed. They laughed out loud. And we had a comment here from Wendy about laughing in her face. They laughed out. I'm not talking sort of smirking. They laughed out loud. Like, you have got to be kidding me. And I looked and I said, Dan was one of the interviewers. And he was a senior guy. He was a vice president in personnel. You should have known better. And I said, Dan, I'm serious. I think I can be the president of this automaker 20 years from now. And he said, Sue, never going to happen. And I left there and I thought, I won't tell you what I actually said, because the little notes, they don't swear. So I won't say what I actually said to myself. No, I didn't swear to them. But I thought, you know what? I think I can do this kind of thing. I think I can lead something. At least I really thought, and I really thought I could. But it punctured me. And I thought, maybe I've got it all wrong. Maybe I am delusional back then. And maybe I should rethink what I'm doing. I don't belong in the business community. Who am I kidding myself? Maybe what I should do is forget this whole university thing and rethink everything. And so I didn't go and work with them that summer. I went and worked up north in mining camps for a company called Archer Cathro, and I was a cook in a mining camp. And I love living outdoors. If I wasn't doing this, I would be living outdoors. And Jill can tell you, I spend most of the summers living outdoors, cooking outdoors, hauling water, cooking on a fire. Believe it or not, I do that. In fact, just another little story, not one I was going to tell you. It was funny. I was camping one time, and I was by myself with the girls, and the tent trailer had broken. We had a tent trailer when the girls were little, and I'd crawled underneath the tent trailer to fix one of the things that hold it up. I don't know what that is, but you know, the things that keep it from falling down. Anyhow, I was underneath. Not a wise thing. But anyhow, I got out, and it was time to take the girls to the little play school that they had at the campground, and I'm just dirt from top of the head to the butt, just dirt, because I've been on the back fixing the tent trailer. And I guess I didn't look like I look right now, I guess. And I walked in, and there was an associate from Faskins. I was the managing partner at the time. And I walked in, and there's Brent Lewis. And I said, "Hey, Brent, how's it going? Didn't expect to see you here." And he, like, the guy almost fainted. And he went, "Oh, my God, you camp." Yeah, I walk, too. So, you know, people see you in different lights, right? Anyhow, where am I? Oh, yeah, back to Archer Cathro. So I went up north, worked in the northern reaches of the Northwest Territories and the Yukon Territory, Christos Lake, and up north of Dawson and whatnot. And while I was there, I reflected a lot on what did I actually want to do. And I really thought at that time I wanted to lead a business. And what I decided was the business community in 1979 wasn't going to give me that pathway. I decided that based on that interview. Maybe it was wrong. And so I said, you know what? Maybe what I'll do is I'll get the double-barreled degree and I'll go to law school and then I'll find my way. And, you know, I managed to do that. But the point is, I wasn't going to let somebody tell me what I couldn't do. I wasn't going to let them own my happiness. And I'd have to say that day to day, I live that. Because if we don't own our own happiness, then we're really giving up a huge part of our lives. So the third part that I wanted to talk to you about personal happiness, Wendy had actually referenced it. And by the way, Wendy made it sound like I did a whole boatload of stuff at the Board of Trade. I actually didn't. I fake it. No, I don't. But one thing I did want to point out is very little. I can honestly say I've done very little that's meaningful on my own. And at the Board of Trade, it was people like Wendy and Jason McLean, who was a wonderful young man, is he a wonderful young man, who was the chair of the board after me. It was working together that we did that stuff, you know, and you got to count on other people. So the third little story I wanted to tell you in terms of personal happiness is about resilience. It's an essential ingredient to happiness. It's a little bit like not letting other people control when you're happy. And I have a little saying that fits into the resilience idea. Everything works out in the end. And if it hasn't worked out, it's not the end. And I actually believe that. I believe our ability to bounce back, to absorb and learn from the nasty things that go on in life is just as important to building confidence and building our happiness and our success as is the good times that we have when we celebrate something that goes well. So a little story about resilience, and this is 1992, spring of 1992. So our eldest daughter is about to go to preschool. And for those of you that are young, there was a time when you couldn't do online registrations. You had to actually do them in person, and that was 1992. And you get up at a god-awful time, it's still dark outside, and you go and stand in line at the preschool of your choice. Some of you are nodding your heads, you have been there, you may have been in the line with me. So there I am, cold spring morning, waiting for my number to be called at the Delbrook preschool, and my number is called, and I have all of the pieces of paper that you needed, the birth certificate and the this and the that, and I filled out the 15,000 forms. And so I go up to the desk, and I don't know why I'm so nervous, but I'm really nervous about registering my daughter for preschool. So I get there, and the teacher takes down all of the information about Diana, and that's good. She checks it all off. And then she says, and father's name, and Brad Gunderson, and fine. Give the address, same as Diana's, great, because she's only 4. And she takes all that, and then she goes, okay, and your name? And I said, Sue Paish. And she looks at me, and she says, oh, and your address? I said, well, it's the same as theirs. And she said, oh, you live in the same house as Brad? And I said, yeah, we're her parents. And she's looking at me, and she says, is he the custodial parent? And I'm not getting this. And I said, custodial parent. We're both her parents. We're married. And she said, what's the birth mother's name? I said, I'm the birth mother. And I'm having this Twilight Zone conversation with this woman. And I said, I'm the birth mother, he's the birth father, we're married, we live together, Diana's our daughter. And she's looking at me, and she said, but your last name's different. And I said, oh, yeah. I don't know how I missed that point, but I said, oh, yeah, I didn't change my name when I got married. And she did this. Oh, you're one of those. And I thought, here I am, aspiring lawyer, law degree, business degree, blah, blah. All I could muster was, I guess so. And I left there because, your first child, your first exposure to the school system, and somebody says, you have basically created chaos for your children because you've not changed your name. And I left there, and I walked, wasn't a very long walk from the preschool back to our house, and I thought, maybe I should change my name now. Maybe, I've ruined the kid for life because I haven't changed. Now, you'll be happy to know that I didn't change my name. And I will tell you that in the last few years, each of my 3 daughters on various occasions have been very happy that they have a different last name from their mother. Even as recently as last week, when my name was associated with a certain labor dispute, et cetera, et cetera. They were very happy that they had nothing to do with that. And in fact, one of my daughter's friends actually said, I thought your mom was leading Life Labs. And my daughter happened to say, yeah, but no. Anyhow, so I left the preschool lineup thinking that I had done something terribly damaging to my family and my children by not changing my name. And it punctured me, just like the General Motors conversation had punctured me. And I didn't give in. I bounced back. I said, you know what, it was the right thing to do then. I'm going to keep my name as it is, and my kids are just fine. And so where does all this leave us? We get bombarded with lists of what we should do, what we shouldn't do, how fast we got to move, we got to do things faster, better, more. There's nearly a relentless demand on us to do. And yet, amid all this hurly-burly, I actually think there is an amazing opportunity. There is, I believe, an opportunity to be at peace with oneself, to be satisfied with one's life, to choose the path that we want to follow, not the path that somebody says we should follow, and to be confident. If we give ourselves the permission to define our values, to live by our values, to own our happiness, and to be resilient, there's nothing that we can't do.